Hello everyone, welcome back. I'm Kris. This is Warhawk channel. The Texas Revolution is the battle of the Alamo. It's a famous battle, at least in the US. I don't know around the world. We're going to break this into two parts. We're going to stop it right there just before the siege of the Alamo. Sorry, just so you know, I'm going to break it into two parts. This is going to be a little bit shorter than the next one because most of the battle will take place then. I have not seen this video. That's in my mind, that's what happens. The Battle of the Alamo. Okay, so before we get started, there's a thanks button on the channel. You can donate, you don't have to. Subscribe if you'd like to, and thumbs up, please. Alright, let's get into the video.
By the end of 1835, President Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna has quelled almost all the Federalist revolts in Mexico. The self-declared Napoleon of the West has ruthlessly put down the Federalist revolts in Zacatecas and Oaxaca in May. In September, he sent his brother-in-law, General Martin Perfecto de Cos, north to suppress the growing disturbances in Texas, where American land pirates and Mexican liberals have allied together. However, in October, reports start filtering back about the disturbing news that resistance has become general. Undeterred, Santa Anna and his advisors plan a course of action to deal with these troublemakers. The president expects a show of force will cow the Norteamericanos into submission. By the end of December, however, the situation has deteriorated rapidly. Santa Anna receives word that General Cos was forced to surrender after the siege of Béjar. Thank you to the sponsor of today's video, World of Warships, which is a free-to-play naval warfare themed game available on the PC. World of Warships allows you to
Thanks, World of Warships.
With the defeat of Cos, all government troops in Texas have been expelled, finally forcing the president's hands. Santa Anna is outraged at the defeat and the embarrassment to his country and his family. He pledges that in 1836, "I will see the utter destruction of those who wish to betray the territory of Texas," and steps down from the presidency. For his expedition, he musters an army of 6,019 men, containing both raw and experienced troops, labeling the force the Army of Operations. The army is broken down into 5 divisions, under the commands of Ramirez y Sesma, Gaona, Tolosa, Urrea, and Andrade. Once all the preparations are made, he marches north overland in late December, heading for the ruined streets of San Antonio de Béjar. Given the vast distance and rugged landscape he will have to traverse, it might be easier for Santa Anna to sail by sea. However, there are a few reasons why the general is marching overland to Béjar. The first is its symbolic value as the political center of the state. Take Béjar, he will hold the entire state in his hands. Second is its point of honor. It is a site where his brother-in-law Cos was recently defeated and forced to surrender. He wants retribution so he can uphold his family's honor. The third reason is its strategic importance. He wants to use Béjar as a base of operations to rid the state of the troublesome Anglos. The fourth and final reason is his men are inexperienced. The raw recruits need time to train, and sailing up the coast would prevent that. As the year passes into 1836, the march north to Texas is treacherous. Many of the soldiers are not accustomed to the extremely cold temperatures and suffer immensely. Along with the weather, the supply chain breaks down almost immediately. The camp followers consume the majority of the food, forcing Santa Anna to cut rations. Suffering from the reduced food in the elements, men start to fall out of the ranks. Those who fall behind are picked off by raiding Comanches, with reports of a few being found scalped. However, despite all the hardships, the Mexican army crossed the Rio Grande into Texas on February 12, 1836, a month before any Texan expected them to arrive. If Santa Anna moves fast, he might be able to capture Béjar without a fight. Before the smoldering ruins of Béjar could be extinguished, the Texans began to bicker among themselves. With Béjar conquered, the provisional government and military leaders need to decide the course of action for 1836, whether to hold on to the defensive line they formed by capturing Behar and Goliad, or move the war south against centralist targets across the Rio Grande. During the last few weeks of the siege, many in the ranks began clamoring for a drive towards the river town of Matamoros. Many proponents argue that capturing the town will benefit the Texians both strategically and financially due to its position at the mouth of the Rio Grande. Bound to the pressure from these advocates, Governor Smith authorizes General Houston to make a demonstration against the town on December 17th. Though not fully on board with the plan, Houston makes his preparations and orders the expedition to rally at Refugio. The general sends out orders to ready the new batch of American volunteers who are mustering at Goliad for the expedition. Unlike the initial volunteers for the war, these new men have no loyalty to Mexico. They have come to fight for Texas independence. However, the newcomers are not the only ones who want freedom. With an unbroken string of victories on the battlefield, a few Texian leaders are now considering severing all ties with Mexico. Despite Houston being in command of the expedition, the council is unhappy with Governor Smith's choice. To get a man they prefer, the council goes behind the governor's back and sends an order for General Burleson to lead the expedition using his army in Behar and strip Houston of his army command. However, whenever the message arrives in the town, Colonel Johnson, instead of Burleson, receives the message, as the latter has resigned from his position. Nevertheless, on January 3, 1836, Johnson strips Behar and Goliad of men and supplies and moves south to the rendezvous point with 300 men, leaving an infuriated Lieutenant Colonel James C. Neal in command with a skeleton garrison. Seeing Johnson march south, Houston joins the column as they head towards Refugio. However, just as Houston and Johnson are moving south to join the gathering army, a new interim council names Colonel James W. Fannin as the new commander of the expedition, who is on his way from Velasco after gathering another force of 200 volunteers. By January 24th, the Texians now have 3 commanders for the expedition who are all heading towards Refugio. When Houston arrives, he receives the order deposing him as commander-in-chief by the council. With little else to do besides leaving, Houston gives a foreboding speech to the volunteers, warning them of the odds of taking such a large town. At the end of the speech, he manages to convince them of the folly of the expedition. As a result, many start to leave, and soon a trickle becomes a stream, unraveling the whole force. Due to infighting, confusion, and a scarcity of supplies, none of the commanders move against Matamoros. 2 of the commanders abandon the expedition and go their own way. Houston, with no men to command, reports to Governor Smith, who sends him on a mission to arrange a treaty with the Cherokee in East Texas. Fannin, now the ranking officer in the field, takes the bulk of the men to La Bahia after receiving reports of a sizable Mexican force in Matamoros. Once he arrives, Fannin makes the place his headquarters and renames the Presidio Fort Defiance. With only 70 men left, Johnson moves to San Patricio to await developments, hoping to salvage the expedition. Now that a forward movement has been halted, the Texians hear rumors of a large Mexican army marching north to Texas. Only time will tell if these reports come true. By January 6, as Johnson's force departs for Refugio, Neal realizes the full extent of his tenuous position in Behar. Johnson leaves Neal in command of 100 men and barely any supplies to defend not only Behar, but also the Alamo, the same position that Kos was unable to defend with 10 times that number. Incensed at his predicament, Neal furiously writes to the provisional government in San Felipe, chastising Johnson for stripping the garrison and requesting reinforcements. If there has ever been $1 here, I have no knowledge of it. The clothing sent here by the aid and patriotic exertions of the Honorable Council was taken from us by the arbitrary measures of Johnson and Grant, taken from men who endured all the hardships of winter and who were not even sufficiently clad for summer. However, despite his desperate situation, nobody is able to assist him as the provisional government is in turmoil over the Matamoros expedition. Not only is the government in chaos, but there are now 3 presumed commanders of the Texian army. Unsure of who's in command, Neal dispatches a message to the nearest ranking officer, General Houston. Houston receives a report on January 17th when he is on his way to take command of the Matamoros expedition and sends his trusted subordinate Bowie to evaluate the situation. Bowie is sent with discretionary orders to remove the cannons and destroy the compound if the Alamo proves to be indefensible. On January 19th, Bowie arrives in the town with 30 men to carry out his orders. However, after surveying the compound, he is impressed with the improvements and changes his mind about destroying the fort. Bowie soon joins Neal in calling upon the government for assistance, declaring to Governor Smith that I would rather die in these ditches than give up Behar to the enemy. Smith knows that Bowie does not make such declarations lightly and orders all possible aid to the men of Behar. Soon, reinforcements arrive in the town. One of the first to arrive on February 3rd is Lieutenant Colonel William B. Travis's mounted company. Travis, a debtor-in-law from Georgia who moved to Texas to start a new life, has been fighting the Mexicans since the Anahuac disturbances. As a cavalryman, Travis is wary of being boxed up in a fort but follows his orders anyway. However, the men of the garrison get a welcome surprise as a famous frontiersman arrives to assist them in their defense. On February 8th, 49-year-old David Crockett, better known as Davy Crockett, arrived at the head of some Tennessee volunteers. 2 decades prior, Crockett established himself as a frontier luminary in Tennessee. He fought in the Creek War and used his fame to be elected to Congress on multiple occasions. However, Crockett's career in politics came to an end when he opposed President Jackson. Hearing of a revolution imminent in Texas, he declared to his former constituents, "You may all go to hell, I will go to Texas." When the Tennessean arrived in Behar, the garrison threw a fandango in his honor. On February 14th, the festive attitude dies down when Colonel Neal has to leave to take care of his sick family, promising that the men he will return. Before leaving, Neal transfers command of the garrison to Colonel Travis, who holds seniority over the more experienced Bowie due to his regular commission in the army, unintentionally snubbing the volunteers. Unable to control the disobedient volunteers, Travis and Bowie cordially agree to be co-leaders until Neal returns. However, there's no time for personal differences. On February 16th, Texian scouts reported that Santa Anna's army crossed the Rio Grande into Texas. Even with the report, Travis believes that he has ample time to gather more men and supplies. However, on February 20th, tensions start to rise in the streets of Behar. Rumors start to swirl around the town about the imminent arrival of the Mexican army, persuading many residents to leave. Even with these worrying signs, Travis is still unconvinced that Santa Anna is near. Later that day, 25 miles to the west, Santa Anna's army crosses the Medina River, the last barrier between his force and Behar. On February 23rd, Travis stations a lookout in the San Fernando Church just as a precaution. Later that afternoon, church bells start to ring, declaring the approach of the Mexican army, way sooner than anybody expected. Shocked at the early arrival of the enemy, the frightened defenders grab what they could carry and run to the Alamo. As the gates close around the compound, Travis has on hand approximately 156 men to man the walls, way under the necessary strength to garrison a 3-acre perimeter. The defenders of the Alamo can only watch as the endless stream of Mexican soldiers march into the town. By the end of the day, 2,100 men have arrived to occupy Behar. After entering the town, Santa Anna instructs his men to fly a blood-red flag over the San Fernando Church, indicating no quarter will be given if the fort is attacked. Seeing the flag, Travis responds with a single shot from the 18-pounder, a response Santa Anna easily understands. Angry with Travis, Bowie tries to negotiate a surrender but to no avail. Upon learning that no honorable surrender can be obtained, the leaders agree to fire another shot from the 18-pounder, signaling the start of the siege. With the blast of the cannon, Travis and Bowie have sealed the fate of all those who are inside. Their only hope now rests in the hands of the provisional government. Fannin.
I never knew about... I don't know much about the battle. I know the outcome, but I don't know much about the battle. I didn't realize that Bowie wanted to negotiate a surrender. That's kind of news to me. Yeah, I understand. I probably have heard about the battle. I've probably been told what happened. It never really registered, you know, hearing about it. I obviously knew about Bowie and Crockett, but I didn't realize that Bowie had tried to negotiate a surrender. Interesting.
And any other Texian willing to assist them. Only when he becomes surrounded does the weaknesses of the compound become apparent. The walls were built to withstand native arrows, not an artillery bombardment. The fortifications lacked strong points where the defenders could easily repel an assault, and the number of men available is woefully inadequate to defend every part of the wall. Near the mission, there is nothing more than a low picket fence keeping the Mexican army out. To counteract this, Travis assigns Crockett and his crack Tennesseans to hold this point. Though the garrison has an ample array of artillery, they lack ammunition and powder for sustained combat. Worst of all, the stores were not stocked up before the siege, forcing the garrison to eat what they had brought with them. At best, they have a month's supply of food. With the inauguration of the siege, the Mexican army surrounds the fort and gets to work reducing the Alamo's walls. Santa Anna dismisses the Alamo as nothing more than an irregular fortification hardly worthy of the name. He and his officers are more concerned about a relief force led by Fanning coming to break the siege. To that effect, he keeps up constant cavalry patrols in all directions, and stations a division to watch the main road leading to Goliad. However, one problem facing the growing Mexican army in Behar is its lack of heavy ordnance. Since the army arrived with only 10 small field pieces, they are forced to move within range of the deadly Texian rifles. The siege guns are expected to arrive in 2 weeks. For now, the Mexicans have to wait outside the walls of the 118-year-old mission. While the Mexicans are digging siege...
Okay, I'm going to stop it there, and we will come back and actually do the main part of the battle. This is all the setup. So, get ready for the fighting. Yeah, like I said, I don't know much about the battle itself. I just know the outcome. Never been to the Alamo. Never really looked into the whole Texas independence thing. Just never did. So this is good for me. So, until part 2, which will be out tomorrow, have a good day, have a good night.